How's it growing, everybody? Are you excited to begin starting your seedlings for the upcoming garden season? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing 4 main ways that I have started seedlings over the years, as well as a few tips and tricks that we find success with each growing season. So, let's get growing. Thank you for joining us today. I am excited to start by sharing with you the 4 main ways that I know of for starting your own seedlings. But first, if we haven't met yet, my name is Zach, and I wanted to welcome you to KT Outdoors, where we share content that helps you build local, healthy food resources by feeding the soil that feeds your body and your soul, all while saving you and your family money while increasing your food security. Now, let's dive into 4 main strategies for starting your seedlings off right. The first method is probably the most common, and that is to start your seedlings off in some sort of a tray system. Now, you can find various versions of this system for sale at big box stores, and in my experience, they all work great. Every year I start a whole lot of seedlings this way, and I generally save any of the plastic trays I get when purchasing live plants so that I can reuse them for starting seeds of my own. The second system I have used is similar, but involves peat pot trays instead of the plastic ones. The general idea here is that you don't have to pull your seedlings out of the tray if you plant them in peat pots. You can simply cut or pull the pots apart and then plant the whole seedling, pot and all, into the ground. Personally, I have to be honest, this is my least favorite method, as I have dug up far too many peat pots that were supposed to break down in the soil, but didn't. You end up with this wadded up root ball that's trying to push through that peat pot and for whatever reason just can't do it. So if I do use these, or if I buy plants that are growing them, that they're already growing in, I will always at a minimum cut the bottom off of the pot, if not peel the whole pot away from the root ball. Comment down below if you have had a similar experience with these, or maybe you've had a better experience than I have had. I don't know if it's just too dry here or what the deal is, but this seems like one of those ideas that sounds good. Like we'll just put the whole plant in the ground and the roots will grow right through it. But in actual practice, that's not my experience, and it doesn't quite deliver as expected. A similar product, however, that I actually do really enjoy using for some plants is the expanding little peat pot puck type things. These awesome little pucks soak up a crazy amount of water and in my experience grow some very strong seedlings. I honestly think I have around 8 to 10 boxes in the greenhouse right now because I love them that much, and I like to keep some on hand in case there's a mad rush on gardening supplies at the start of the season. Yeah, thank you 2020 for that little lesson. These things are super easy to use. You simply soak them up, arrange them neatly in your trays, and pop your seeds into the top, and they are off and running. I would encourage you to not grow root vegetables in them though. I made this mistake last season with some beets and turnips. The mesh that is on the outside doesn't really break away very easily, so as their roots swell, they have to like push through that and it ends up tearing it. It's just not the best system for root vegetables, but I absolutely love, love, love them for things like lettuce and kale and all of that. There are sufficient holes in the fibery mesh that's holding the peat pot together that in my experience the roots can go right through them without any problems whatsoever. And I really like the fact that I'm not disturbing the roots when I go to plant out my seedlings, particularly with like those lettuces and things, because I want to get them growing as quickly as I can. And so any sort of stress on the plant during the transplant process is going to slow that down potentially. So I love that they can just be popped in the ground and we're off and running. I find that for these types of vegetables, they work very well. And I've had great success using them in just the normal standard trays. So you don't have to buy the very special specific peat pot trays that they kind of clip into. Like those work great too, but you can also use them in just a regular old planting tray. And then finally, if you have never heard of soil blocking, it is worth looking into, especially if you are looking at a more sustainable approach. The basic concept here is, well, think of growing seedlings in a sand castle, basically. Growing media is packed heavily into a mold, and then it is released to form a perfect little block where the seeds are planted and grown. The main benefit of soil blocking is that you obviously don't need to store and deal with any plastic trays, and you don't have to buy the fancy peat pots I have described above. What you will have to buy is some of the bulk ingredients needed to successfully put together a soil block mix. I won't get into the details of this now, but I will try and link a few resources in the description down below for anyone who wants to know more about what goes into those mixes. You will find as you research this that opinions vary on what does and doesn't need to be in that mixture. I bought some soil blockers from Johnny's Seed, which I absolutely love, but you can also find lots of DIY options online if you're interested in making your own. I found soil blocks to be very successful ways to start seedling, but they would obviously be harder to sell or share if that's something that you are thinking of doing down the road than obviously a seedling that's in an actual pot. So just keep that in mind. Once you settle on how you want to start your seeds, you need to start thinking about what media you will use. Now, if you are using those lovely expanding peat pots, that's already been taken care of, right? I mean, like everything you need is there. You just pop the seed in the top and then maybe sprinkle a little bit of seed starting mix on the top of them, and you're off to the races. But the other three options will require some form of soil for your plants to root into. Now, you'll find seed starting mixes available, but I believe that the main benefit of these is that they are easy for the seedlings to push through. But when it comes to available nutrients, they leave something lacking. Often they are mixes formulated with heavy amounts of peat and vermiculite, almost exclusively, both of which are basically inert nutritionally at least. So it is for this reason that I generally fill the bottoms of my seedling trays with a mixture of homemade compost and or worm castings mixed with some of the seed starting mixture. This adds at least some nutrition to the mix in my opinion and stretches the usefulness of that seed starting mix across more trays, which that stuff's kind of expensive when you really start to think about how much you're getting for the price that you're paying. It's a lot more expensive than like straight potting soil, for example. I'll then use a straight seed starting mix to cover the seedlings, like just a thin layer at the very end on top of that mixture. Now, some people like to top their pots with a thin layer of straight vermiculite to help those seedlings break through the surface soil as well. That's an option if you want to consider it. You can do some more research on your own if you'd like more of the pros and cons for that. I personally have never done it, so I don't really feel like I have much to share there. I just know it's something that some people do. If I fertilize, it will be a very dilute liquid fertilizer after the seedlings have already started growing. You have to keep in mind that a seed has what it needs to start the growing process off. Like there's nutrition stored inside of that seed to get that seedling a boost on growth. So initially they don't need a lot of fertilizer, but once they start growing and putting out some true leaves, then they could benefit from a little bit of a boost just to help them get growing. And speaking of growing, if you'd like to help us grow this channel, I could sure use your help. I've got a lot of great content planned for this year, so why not consider subscribing if you haven't already, and then give this video a quick thumbs up. It really helps this video get seen by others who might find this same information useful. Now, when it comes to water, I generally try and water my seedlings from the bottom, especially early on. You do this by filling the tray beneath them with water and then draining any off that doesn't get soaked up into the cells or the soil or whatever you're using. After the seedlings have become more established, then I might begin overhead watering to some degree, like just with a watering can. The biggest threat water-wise to young seedlings is oversaturation. If the soil is too wet, or even worse, their drip tray stays full of water, then the roots cannot breathe like they need to, and your seedlings will suffer if not die entirely. So don't let them dry out completely, and check the drip tray for oversaturation, and you should be good to go. That's especially critical if you're using soil blocks, because too much water in a soil block will disintegrate the soil block and break it all down. You'll notice in some of these pictures that we put cardboard under our first rounds of soil blocking, under the notion that the cardboard itself would act as a wicking agent to pull that water up to where the seed blocks or the soil blocks could get access to them. I don't know that that was necessary, but we had good success with it, so it's what we use if we use soil blocks. Our final point today is how many seeds you should put in each cell. Now, general wisdom will tell you to sow exactly one seed per cell, right? That makes sense. I want to have a seedling. I need one seedling to be growing in this cell, so I'll just put one seed in there. There are, however, some drawbacks to this approach. First of all, what if that one seed doesn't sprout? Now you have an empty cell, and if it happens more than once, potentially 6 or 8 empty cells. Depending on how detailed your plans are for your garden, having an empty cell might be an issue when it comes time to plant things out. For that reason, I almost always try to plant 2 to 3 seeds per cell, depending upon what the plant is and how old the seeds are that I'm sowing. If I'm worried that they have a little bit of age on them, I might plant a little bit more heavily, just hoping that I get at least one to sprout. Now, sowing multiple seeds on purpose is a method that is popularized by an amazing gardener named Charles Dowding, who grows a beautiful no-dig market garden over in the United Kingdom. He uses a method that he calls multi-sown, where he intentionally will plant, say, 3 or 4 beetroots in one cell. They will grow together in this clump without thinning. By using this method, he can get 3 to 4 plants in the same space traditionally recommended to grow only one. This triples your harvest, and by picking the largest items first, you create space for the remaining roots or plants to grow out a little bit more, so you have a bit of a delayed reward and you can extend your harvest season that way. He calls this method multi-sowing, which I absolutely love. I tried it for the first time last year and was very happy with the results. I'll put a link to his channel down below if you want more information on his approach and methods. If you have not discovered him, I think he is an amazing resource for anybody who wants to know more about gardening. He's been doing it for years, and his content is just really, really beneficial to all of us. So for what it's worth, go check him out. All right, there you go. I hope you are planning on starting some seeds of your own this year. One key in your garden journey is to just start doing things. Start growing a garden. Start composting. Starting your own seeds. All of these skills grow better through experience that can best be gained through just the simple trial and error of doing it and doing it again and doing it again over and over and over again. So get outside and get growing, because life is better when it's lived outdoors. We'll see you next time.